What makes choosing life so difficult? You weren't meant to be a mom anyway. This is a response that an abortion facility worker said to today's guest when she came in for her abortion at the age of 19. Can you imagine someone saying that to you, women? That sort of derogatory, blasé response from a facility worker is a common thread in the stories of women who have abortions. We often hear this phrase, you weren't meant to be a mom, or maybe you just have kids later. Hey everyone, I'm Kristan Hawkins. Thanks for joining me this week on the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I'm very excited to have today's guest on. Fortunately, today's guest did not listen to the advice of that abortion facility worker. Kelly Tolman, she did not have an abortion. Instead, she went on to not only give birth, but then went beyond and started her own pregnancy resource center next to an abortion facility in Georgia, as well as a new organization, the Pelican Project, which is an online resource for and support for parents in educating children about the sanctity of human life. Co-founder of the Pelican Project, a Massachusetts native, Kelly Tolman, moved to Florida after high school to pursue studies at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Florida. I'm very jealous. During Kelly's second year, she became pregnant and struggled under the cultural pressure to abort. After 3 failed abortion appointments, Kelly and her now husband, Fred, chose life for their son, Nick. The struggle Kelly experienced during her unplanned pregnancy was a catalyst for action. Following a call by the Holy Spirit, that's a common thread you hear in the pro-life movement, Kelly embarked upon a journey to start a pregnancy resource center directly beside the local abortion facility in her town. This PRC was designed to be the center she needed so many years before. She served as the center's founder and executive director until the Army moved Kelly, Fred, and their 4 children back to Massachusetts. When her husband was stationed in Boston, she then worked for the Archdiocese of Boston within the Secretariat for Evangelization and Discipleship and the Family Life Office. Now stationed in South Carolina, Kelly serves as co-founder and director of content at the Pelican Project. She also serves as a speaker on all things Catholic. She holds a BA in Homeland Security and Master in Theology from Franciscan University of Steubenville, which is about 10 minutes from where I grew up. So Kelly, I'm so excited to have you on today and talk about your story and how you use this story for good and to save so many lives.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Honored to be talking to you.
I'll put aside the pizza conversation of where you had pizza at Franciscan. That's always usually my first question I ask Franciscan grads. We can talk about that later. That's the one thing in that area I think is most famously known for is Italian food, but we'll talk about that later. I wanted to have you on today because, you know, I got started in the pro-life movement volunteering at a pregnancy center. I know many of, the pro-life generation members, Students for Life leaders. That's really one of the first places we get our start, even, after we've felt that kind of nudge, the Holy Spirit nudge to get involved in the pro-life movement. The question is, where do I serve? And I think the question I always had as a young person, I still have as not such a young person anymore, is what do you think we need to be doing better in the movement? Or, I mean, what is it that you needed to hear? I mean, you had 3 failed abortion appointments. So you obviously were very much considering going through with the abortion procedure and then, changing your mind. What did you need to hear? And what was, how do you use that in your work today in the pro-life movement?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question because that's exactly why we started the PRC. I started it as the clinic I needed. And honestly, it's going to sound crazy. I needed somebody to maybe say congratulations. It's as simple as that. There's so many times. Yeah, it really was. I remember when I found out I was pregnant, I was in my dorm room. I was sitting on the floor waiting for the results. I was sweating bullets and my roommates had no idea what was going on. And when I finally worked up the courage to tell people I was pregnant, my boyfriend, my roommates, their face dropped and it was like I told them I had a terminal disease with 10 minutes left to live. I mean, and so when that's the reaction you're met with, your immediate thinking is like fight or flight. Like, oh crap,
Yep.
maybe
That's
I'm
right.
not recognizing how bad this is. Um,
Mm.
so for me, I think the clinic we started, really the point was, let's just encounter women, and we can acknowledge that the circumstances surrounding pregnancy are hard in certain
Yep.
situations, that everything might not be, laid out, that their journey into
Mm-hmm.
parenthood is going to have some hurdles, but we can, in that one moment when we encounter a new mom, celebrate the fact that there's still new life, and we can rejoice
Mm-hmm.
in that. And there's a tactful way to do that. And if I had that, I probably would not have been so dead set on having an
Mm.
abortion. So that's
Mm.
really what we needed. We just to encounter somebody with a smile.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, that's so simple, right? Like everybody can smile and say congratulations, but you're right. It's like this weird, especially what, the younger the mother is, right?
Hmm.
Um, of just like, I don't know what to say. And clearly if a girl is 15 years old, 16 years old, she's not intending to get pregnant.
Hmm.
And so to say, I think a lot of people struggle a lot with that. Did you come from a Catholic family and a pro-life family?
I did. I was raised in the church for sure. I went to Catholic high school. I went to
Mm-hmm.
mass every Sunday. But when I graduated when I was 17 and I moved down to Daytona Beach, Florida to go to college, I left all of that at the door. I went to college not for the academic opportunities. Later I went back, and of course, but it's like that. I was raised in the church. I knew right from wrong. I didn't have a relationship, I don't think, at that point with our Lord. And honestly, like, I knew I
Mm-hmm.
was pro-life, but it hadn't happened to me before. I hadn't had to, like, kind of,
Mm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it becomes your
It's
own,
different when it's your own life, right?
yeah, it's your own life. It's your own, I felt immediate shame because everyone was like, when I say congratulations, obviously when you're looking at a 15-year-old, you're not like, you're throwing up confetti and saying congratulations, but there can be an encounter of like, okay, like this is not the end. Like, okay, like
Yeah.
you're going to be okay. This baby's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a future ahead of you. And let's talk about what that could look like. So,
Mm.
yeah. So, I mean, I didn't have that. And I was maybe
Mm.
up here pro life, but in my heart, it hadn't connected yet. So I really seriously discerned abortion and tried to get one 3 times. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think this is important. This is an important conversation for parents too, especially if you consider of those. What are those first words? Your daughter calls you from college to say, "Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant." And I think we have to be very careful about what our first words are. And as a parent, you obviously have a lot of hopes and dreams and ambitions for your children. Some of it you may be living vicariously through your children. And so there's obviously going to be a sense of disappointment there, a sense of concern, fear for your child. But, that first phrase that comes out of your mouth,
Yeah,
like, changes everything and
it
the
is.
trajectory of the whole conversation. Did you tell your parents when you were pregnant, or did you go just immediately to peers?
I went immediately to peers. I've always been sort of
Yeah.
like, I had a good relationship with my parents, but
Mm-hmm.
at that time, I was like, well, I'm a teenager, I know everything. So
Mm-hmm.
clearly I don't have to tell mom and dad. And then after I made the decision to choose life, I just knew how ashamed, I knew in my soul how ashamed and disappointed. And when I called
Mm.
and I said, Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. And my mom said, okay, are you okay? I was like, wait, what? That's your answer? And I felt so much relief. I had made
Mm-hmm.
it into something way bigger. Maybe because I went to my peers and I didn't give
Yeah.
my mom and dad credit. I was so scared to tell them. So then when we had women come to us, especially young people come to us at the clinic and say, I just can't tell my mom and dad, we're like, you know what? It's a lot worse in your head than it's actually going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, not always, but
Yeah.
usually. Yeah.
Usually, I think it's true, and I think what you're saying about you went to your peers first. It's a sad statement of, and I think you and I are probably around the same age. I don't know what your age is, but
Really?
okay, I'll be 38 soon. So yeah, we're on the same age. But yeah, I mean, I think that we grew up in this generation of like, I am woman, hear me roar. Women can do anything, we're just as smart as men. We're probably smarter than men. Like it was a very like affirming pro woman culture.
Yeah.
Except for when you get pregnant. And so then it's like, hold on, put on the brakes. You're like, you are a woman, here you are, you can do whatever you want, and you're just as good as men, except if you're pregnant, now you can't do it. And it's suddenly like all your hopes and all your dreams and your career aspirations, they go out the window. And it's like, you see that and you still see it regurgitated with young people today on college campuses. I was talking to a student just last night on a college campus who you could tell she was really trying to sort through the issue, mush, and I would call the mushy middle. And, she obviously had reservations about abortion, but then, was like, I'm just so afraid. I'm just so afraid that I get pregnant. And the obvious answer is, like, if you're that afraid, you don't have to have sex. So that's like the obvious, like, that's the mom answer. That's not the answer everybody wants to have. But that's like the obvious mom answer of like, it's actually the answer is like right in front of you.
Yes.
But the other answer is, what makes you think you can't do it? Like, you're the accomplished woman going to a great university. You obviously have your head put on straight. Like, you can do this. Yeah. And there are federally mandated, if you're going to, I was at State University, there's federally mandated resources and support you have to have. Like, what makes you think, who's speaking these like lies into you and this doubt into you that you're not strong enough, you're not noble enough to sacrifice, and maybe go through the pain of childbirth for 9 months so someone else can have 90 years. I think that's, it's a very anti-feminist statement in a time where I felt like we were raised in a pretty pro-feminist culture. I mean, the feminists have disappeared. We don't know where they're at. They're like hiding in their closets now with the trans movement. They've like, they're nowhere to be found.
They don't know what to say. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. They're literally hidden. Like, I don't even hear or see of them ever. But, I just feel like, it's just like, where did this come from? It's a very sad statement and indictment. When you were there at the pregnancy center before you all left Georgia, beyond the like, congratulations or it's okay, you can do this, you can get through it. What was the other, I guess maybe what was something that you learned after starting the pregnancy center, starting this pregnancy center that you wish you would have had? Yeah. What was something you learned that maybe surprised you?
Oh gosh, there was every single day, right? So like one of the things we wanted to make sure our women knew is you were not alone. And that we felt what was really important to us is clearly there are short and long-term reasons why you don't feel like you can journey into parenthood right now. So how do we help? And it started outside of, just helping people from the back of the car, like, we had women who were just nervous about being able to finish school. And so I had homeschool mom friends that were like, I can tutor you. And then they would just meet weekly and they would help them take their GED test or complete high school and babysit, the other kids. And it just became this like beautiful community of people just helping people. And when people realized that when these women and families realized that they were not actually alone, that was a game changer, I think, for us. And so being able to let people know right up front, like, you matter as a woman and as a mother and your child matters. And we are going to walk with you 12 to 24 months past the birth of your baby and get you into a safe, secure, and self-sustaining living environment. And when we were actually like walking the walk and committing to that, like we had relationships with the local tech college where we were helping women go and get like, certificates where they weren't making minimum wage and they were able to kind of become that self-sustaining mom, maybe especially if they were in relationships with men that they needed to have independence from. Maybe they were unhealthy relationships so they could earn that paycheck and all of those things. Once they realized like that was available and we weren't going away and we meant what we said when we said you are not alone. I think that what was most surprising, I think, is that people were just, like you said, just scared. They were just afraid that they were going to be left alone. And there's too many of us on this planet to leave any mom alone. And it's, and I had to at some point tell my son, who is now 20, he's in the Army himself, when I started this work and we started talking about my story and my 3 abortion appointments, there's a point in time where I had to sit with Nick and say, this is what chose to do 3 times. And by the grace
Mm.
of God, I did not abort you. But I had to
Mm.
tell him that. And I was like, I was so nervous to tell him. And I just remember he looked at me and he said, he was probably like 10. And he said, Mom, I am so sorry that you felt so alone. Like that was his answer to me. And I just was like, okay, all right. Like you are amazing. And you continue to be a gift from God. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And so, and that just really hit home the fact that, nobody goes to an abortion clinic because they're excited to abort their baby. Generally, they feel like they have no choice at all, and that's why they go.
Yeah.
And so when you're out there and you can just say like, hey, there's help available, you're not alone. And you have the
Yeah.
power to choose life because you are a strong woman. Um,
Mm.
that was, that was huge. And then we always share, as we transitioned into the Pelican Project, what we were realizing on the sidewalk was that, we were always asking this question, like, what can we be doing now to prevent that
Yeah.
woman, that family that's gonna maybe otherwise step on these abortion, into this abortion clinic 10, 15 years from now. And we have this one woman that came in. She was not abortion minded. She was pregnant with her third baby. She didn't know the fathers of any of her children, but she was really scared of entering into parenthood again with this particular child and having to just provide. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
just telling her like how worthy she was and how precious she was, and that she was giving pieces of herself away to men that didn't deserve her. Like she was worthy of so much
Mm-hmm.
more. And she began to cry. After she got angry, she began to cry, and she said, "Nobody has ever said I'm worthy of anything before." And it broke my
Mm.
heart. And we started to recognize that that's really what these women needed. They needed just to
Mm.
be lifted up and to be just encouraged and loved.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've noticed on campuses as well. Just since COVID, since I started going back to speaking on campuses after COVID, every speech I give, I really try to, at some point in the presentation, stop, look at the audience and say, not only do these preborn human beings matter, but you matter too.
Yeah.
And if no one's told you that, I'm telling you, you matter.
Yeah.
Because we've seen more and more of these conversations on campuses with young people who, and sometimes people do this just to like argue their way, and be kind of like a shock value type of thing. But I've actually come to believe that some of these people really do believe that there is no value to human life.
Yeah.
And some of these comments that we're hearing on campuses, I mean, I just had a student at University of South Florida tell me that, yes, my life is equally valuable of a cockroach is. And and at that point I was like, sir, I really can't, there's not much I can do to convince you probably that abortion is wrong.
Right.
But by that point, there was a whole crowd of people around seeing that, wow, this is the end result of this culture of death, that we have to deny the value and the dignity of these human beings.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for us to see how more and more students are willing to like bite that bullet and then like actually come out and say, I don't think we're special. I don't think the human fetus has any value. And when you push them, I don't think I have any value either.
Yeah.
That's a wounded culture for sure.
Yeah. And hurt people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Why? I guess one of the things that I didn't ask, I should have asked before, that just intrigues me is, why was it 3 failed abortion appointments?
Oh, yeah, that story. I think about it all the time. God gave me, I think, that just the grace of time. When I went into the first abortion appointment, I got my money together. The woman told me, you weren't meant to be a mom. I was 19, prideful, and I just, took my money away, because what she was taking away from me when she said I wasn't meant to be a mom is the reality that I knew I was already a mom. I knew what I was there to do. I knew it was going to be hard, and she was kind of taking away the gravity of the situation from me. So I kind of, in my pride, took the money away and said, yeah, I'm going to get my abortion elsewhere. And the next week I made another abortion appointment. And there were people outside praying. And I was so ashamed to get out of the car. And, in that moment, my boyfriend was like, what are these losers doing? And you need to get a life. And now I just praise God every single day that they were courageous enough to wake up and to show up, because they saved the life of my son that day. And, thank goodness for heaven that they'll find that out. But they don't know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what their very presence meant. It made me recognize and realize and reminded me that, I hadn't thought about, you know, my faith. I hadn't thought about our Lord. I hadn't thought about the dignity of the human person, all of those things. So I didn't even get out of the car.
It was the tunnel vision of the crisis.
Yeah, 100%. And they represented outside of that tunnel, I think. And I was scared. So God bless them. And then my third abortion appointment, we get stuck in traffic, and the abortion clinic, they were just really like, hey, you need to be on time. You're late. We're not going to do this for you. And I was getting so stressed out. And we were actually gridlocked traffic because of construction. And I looked up, and their truck in front of me had a Choose Life plate. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I'm stuck behind this truck for 25 minutes on the phone with the abortion facility. And God is literally hitting me over the head with the words Choose Life. So,
wow.
Yeah. And those are just.
So those ugly yellow licenses, we should all go out and get them.
This was in Florida. I don't know if it was, it was.
I can't stand the yellow ones. I love the people I just don't like the yellow ones.
South Carolina doesn't have the yellow ones either, but I'm just
okay.
Pro-life, and I'm like.
But something pro-life for sure. That's for sure. I mean, I think that story is amazing because one, it's like God was like hitting you over the head.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly Nick must be a very special young person, and bound to do great things in our world. But I think it's amazing because what talking about these witnesses that you have in the pro-life movement, that so many of us have been out there praying in front of an abortion facility on a Saturday morning, or many of us aren't as vain as Kristan and will put the yellow license plate on their car, or, putting the pro-life window decal or bumper sticker, putting the pro-life bumper sticker on your laptop, or me, I have like a helpline number on all my checks that I do because I'm an old person. I have checks.
I do too. Yeah, we're old.
You write them out. You can't just Venmo people.
No.
I know some people are like, I've never seen one of those before that I've worked with young people. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing just this witness that you're right. You just don't know. And that these people who you've never met and they've never met you or your son, they've saved a life.
Yeah. And when you're looking for a sign and you are thirsty for somebody to tell you otherwise, mm-hmm. and you see that, you hold on to it, and the Lord will put that in your path. I'm so thankful. So yeah, I mean, we chose life that day, and things didn't get easier, but the Lord's always provided. Yeah. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Tell me, the pregnancy center that you started, I'm going to ask you about the Pelican Project a little bit, but the pregnancy center you started, what resources did Planned Parenthood do that you couldn't do?
Yeah, well, the one beside us was not a Planned Parenthood.
Okay. The abortion facility, sorry.
Yeah, the abortion facility. Yeah, they had very few resources. The only resource they had was abortion. So we could actually do 100 things that they couldn't do. And yeah, I mean,
that's what it sounded like hearing your story about, walking with women and really walking them, during the pregnancy and after the pregnancy. You're describing this, creating this community that are coming along, women and families, which is literally the exact opposite of what the abortion lobby accuses us of the pro-life movement. I was, just at campus where all these protesters came up, and it was like, you're a pro-force birther. And it was, making this accusation that pro-lifers do not care about women and their families after the child is born. Mm. And I think that's so frustrating because I'm like, you clearly have never met any of us.
Right.
And hello, let me introduce myself.
And everything was free. Yeah. And everyone was a volunteer. And the grace of this was that we had one powerhouse volunteer, Theresa, she's a dear friend, and she ministered directly to the abortion workers. Mm. And we had one abortion worker every single morning. She'd go in and be like, good morning. And after a year, she walked into our office, and Theresa Redback was like, Kelly, someone's here to see you. And I walk out, and I was just like, and she was like, I bet you never thought you'd see me in here. I'm like, would you like a cup of coffee? What can I do for you? And her story was actually devastating. You know what she said to me? She said her job was POD, products of conception. So she had to reassemble the aborted children. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes. She had never spoken to me before. And she said, I had to reassemble triplets yesterday, and I never want to do that again. I mean, what do you do with that? We burst into tears. She burst into tears. And that was the first conversation we've ever had with this woman. But she felt safe enough to walk through our doors and knew that we would accept her, no judgment. And then we still talk to her. That was 8 years ago. No, maybe 5 years ago. And we're still in touch with her. So I think for us, what we were doing and what made such a difference is like, we would have young people come to us and say, I didn't come here when I was pregnant. I went next door, but I'm bringing my friend to you because I probably should have come here instead. So we were able to plant seeds, and I think it had a ripple effect. So there's hope, even when that woman does go into an abortion clinic and she doesn't take the help of a sidewalk advocate, she doesn't walk into PRC. If you're planting seeds, you're still making a difference.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's was it the parable of like, throwing all your seeds out there, right? And some of the seeds are going to land in the vines and the weeds, and they're not going to take root, and some of them will. But as a sower of seeds, your job is not to sit there and evaluate all of the seeds in your hand. Your job is to throw the seeds out there, and some of those seeds are going to save lives. Some of those seeds are going to change minds. Some of those seeds may not do anything, or they may not do anything for 20 years. But you're called to throw those seeds out there and be that sower of seeds.
Yeah, 100%. When we were talking to, everyone would say, Mother Theresa, we're not called to be successful. We're called to be faithful.
Oh gosh, woman, I used to have that on my wall for years.
Yeah.
No matter how bad it got. I remember one time during Students for Life's history, we had 2 staff members who were killed by a drunk driver.
Oh my gosh.
In South Carolina, Georgia line, actually. And it was bad. There was a recession going on. The election was happening. So donations, it's kind of similar to what's happening now. Donations are down. Kristan gets extremely stressed, daily migraines, trying to keep salaries and paychecks, everything afloat. And it was bad. It was a really bad time. I wasn't taking a paycheck. Jonathan and I went in debt. And like, I had to call a couple supporters and say, if you can't give me right now, I'm not gonna be able to pay the rest of the staff. And the Lord saw us through that fight. But I remember one time I made like this like quote wall. I just like hung it up in my bedroom of like motivational quotes for myself. And that was that Mother Teresa quote of God doesn't call us to be successful. He calls us to be faithful. Is something that I often had to remind myself during the very, it's a difficult time right now in the pro-life movement, but it was much harder then. So I think that's true. And I think for somebody like myself, and you sound very similar to me, of type A personalities of like wanting to have the control and do the things, and knowing sometimes what you're doing is going to yield that fruit immediately, and sometimes you just have to be okay with it not. But just continuing to do the work, continuing to put in the effort, will produce fruit, because the Holy Spirit is the one who's ultimately driving this whole thing forward. And thank God for that, because I'm not smart enough. Next question. I want to talk about the Pelican Project. A question I get all the time, like no matter where I'm at, if there's pro-life adults there, there's always some form of question of, how do I keep my kids pro-life? Or, my granddaughter went to school, came back Thanksgiving. She was Catholic in her faith, pro-life. Now she's an atheist, lesbian, and pro-abortion, where these parents and grandparents are witnessing this huge change in their children because they've gone to college. Their whole worldview has been challenged. What's some of your best advice? My oldest is 14, so I haven't fully experienced the college thing yet. I'm getting ready to, but not yet.
Yeah. Oh, it's scary out there. I have an 8.
I know. I'm already terrified.
My youngest is 8 and my oldest is 20, and he's an infantryman in the Army. So that's just like college. I think honestly, the biggest key is consistency and confidence. Just, if you are only talking to your kids about what it means to be pro-life, or that human life is sacred, if you're only talking to them about those things when we happen to read it on a Sunday at Mass, or when we're happening, to going to our local pro-life march, If that's the only time we're having
Mm-hmm.
those conversations, you're not planting seeds. You're not teaching them. It can't be a chapter in a Sunday school program. It can't be something that we only talk about in Respect Life Month in October. Being pro-life has to be a lens by
Amen.
which we look through every other conversation. And then from there, you can make these logical conclusions. If I'm made in the image and likeness of God and human life is sacred and we're entrusted to one another, then there's a responsibility on me because human life is sacred. And that's the best you can do. Consistency of talking to your kids every single day. And that's at the Pelican Project what we do. We have these bite-sized little devotionals that we give our kids every single week. And it just teaches, like, it brings out a word, like words matter. Now, when we're redefining literally everything, we have to talk about what does it mean to be a girl? Like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that with your second grader, your first grader, your kindergartner, and give them the confidence to say, no, I know what objective truth is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's true. It's, that we did like a little how to keep your kids pro-life booklet years and years ago. And I think like number one was, tell your children there's objective moral truth.
Yes.
Take your children to volunteer opportunities, have them see you living out your pro-life beliefs.
Yeah.
Those two things are key because when we talk to young people on campuses now, it's, pro-lifers are hypocrites. They don't care about women. If these kids have been taken to a pregnancy center gala or any volunteer opportunity or to be exposed to pro-lifers ever in their life, they wouldn't be able to say that. And that's important because in terms of minds changed, it's belong, believe, behave. If people hate you, if people feel like we're a bunch of hypocrites, they're not going to ever listen to what we have to say.
Yeah.
So that's a huge problem. And the other problem is we have young people now in campuses, and especially after COVID, there is something that happened during COVID. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I certainly have, being on college campuses. It has gotten 100 times worse.
Really?
And the moral relativism that we saw before COVID is out of control at this point on campuses. That's your truth. There is no relative truth. What do you mean there's no relative truth? Can I murder you right now?
Right.
Can I pull out a gun and shoot you? Would that be okay? Because I would say that is wrong.
Right.
And I mean, I had a girl at University of South Carolina this semester.
Ooh, that's right.
Very smart. Oh, there you go. At Columbia, a very smart, articulate young woman. Was really trying to think through the issue. It was very kind. Obviously wasn't with me on my viewpoint. But would not definitively say that owning another human being was wrong. She couldn't say it.
Yep.
She kept saying, well, I believe it's wrong. Absolutely slavery is wrong. But I just can't speak for some other cultures.
Because if she had to say that, then she would have to own the fact that killing another human being, i.e. the unborn, is wrong. And they can't go there.
Yeah, they really can't. And so I honestly, like, we were videotaping it, and I don't, my video producer hasn't made it into a clip yet, but maybe he will. But I don't know how smart I'll look in the clip because honestly, I was like, okay then, like I can't convince, like if I can't convince you that there's objective moral truth and that killing human beings is wrong, the best I can do is hopefully show my sincere shock at your inability to say that.
Yeah.
And hopefully that sticks with you at some point when you're alone in your room thinking and rethinking the conversation, realizing how terrible that sounded. I mean, it just, I don't have a great, I don't have a great Kristan type of witty response to, I mean, I could say like a mean thing, like, wow, what an awful human being you must be. Or I can just, I think about these things after these conversations. I'm like, gosh, was I supposed to, people see my speeches on campus or something on campus and I'll get these wonderful like replies like, I used to volunteer at Planned Parenthood and I was raised in pro-choice home. Now I'm 100%, I stumbled upon your video and I kept watching. Now I'm pro-life, blah, blah. And so there's like this pressure of like, what did God want me to say to this person?
Right.
Not only this person, but then the other people are watching and how can I, I'll be thinking about that conversation for a while.
Well, I think there's also something important about just letting it hang there. Like sometimes there's just nothing that can be said. Like, that's where we are. Thank
you for making me feel better about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't see myself as a smarty pants pro-life philosopher. I'm just the one willing to get yelled and screamed at and protested. So therefore I'm there out there having this conversation.
Kristan, your work is brilliant. And then when I watch it and I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to be doing so much better. Kristan's work is the reason why we need to be doing better as parents, because some of these kids know nothing. They know nothing.
I know. I mean, that's what you said. You've been having the study book for what is a woman. I mean, you have to think this is the first. I was talking to one of our more liberal leaning staff members, and we were talking about dialogue on campus. And she was telling me, she's like, well, you have to realize, like, this is the first generation that some of them haven't been told what a woman or what a man is.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? Like, you're like lying. Like, that can't be real.
Right? When that clicks, you're like, we didn't. And there are parents.
Yeah.
We just take for granted. Like, I don't have to teach my kid that. And then the culture is filling in blanks for you. And so that's our biggest thing with the Pelican Project. Like, your kids have questions because the culture is, everything's on fire right now. Your kids have questions. And if you are scared of their questions, you can't answer their questions, they're going to find an answer out there. And that's where we're going to get it wrong. So we need to equip parents to be able to feel confident and have the verbiage. Like, if parents, like, I remember, I mean, like I said, I'm 40. When I was being raised, I was, singing Jesus Loves Me while coloring my Noah's Ark and eating my Nilla wafers. I don't know why human life is sacred. Like, nobody ever told me that.
I know. I still haven't had the sex talk with my parents. I'm still waiting for that one.
My mom and dad my mom put a book under my pillow. And like 2 days later, she was like, do you have any questions? I was like, none at this time.
Oh my gosh. It's just like reminding me, like, I think my husband's had the conversation with my son, but I didn't go into full detail even myself. I was like, yeah, that's taken care of, right? I think it was because now Gunnar now does knock when coming in my bedroom.
There you go. Yeah.
He's aware of something has gone through. But it's crazy that, and to think that you have to have these conversations with your kids, and these are uncomfortable conversations to have.
Right.
But you're 100% right. Like, I did a video when I first explained to Gunnar what abortion was. He roughly knew. He was a very inquisitive young boy, same age as Nick when you told him about your story. Gunnar was 10. And so we filmed it, and I remember we put it up, and people were like, I can't believe this woman told her 10-year-old this, she should never have done that. She's traumatized. I'm like, why not?
Right.
Like, he hears me talking about it every single day. Like, my husband's like, I hate the word abortion. Stop, because I'm constantly saying I work from home. Yeah. They're constantly hearing it. They roughly know what abortion is. I had to explain at 4 years old what abortion is to some of my children who have asked. But like, why not? I have to have these uncomfortable conversations because this terrible thing is happening in our society.
Right.
And I'm certainly not going to let Planned Parenthood explain to my child what abortion is.
And they are on the prowl. They have a financial vested interest to be the first one to tell your children. And so, like, at the Pelican Project, we recognize that parents, okay, if you got a 4 or 5 year old, depending upon your kid, the temperament, it can be hard to have that conversation. Yeah. But let's empower parents. You don't have to use the word abortion at 4 or 5 years old, but you can certainly talk about the sanctity and the beautiful gift that is the unborn child. I mean, we have like a spiritual adoption prayer that we have young people, a whole entire family, like, Mom, Dad, that's great. You're doing that by yourself, but you need to include your kids in that prayer because they're just going to apparently start to recognize we get to pray for that baby in that lady's belly. That's so cool. We get to pray that baby deserves care. Awesome. And that plant seeds.
It does. It really does. I was at a campus and a little daycare was walking through, and I had my fetal models out, my abortion tools. And I didn't obviously take my abortion tools. And I was like, kids, do you want to hold a little baby?
Yes.
And it was so cute because these little kids are like cradling this baby, and this one boy, was trying to take the head off the baby, and the other little girls like, stop that, it's a baby, I was like, if we could just have the 20-year-olds gather around right now and watch what these 4-year-olds are doing with my fetal model, I don't need to stay here the rest of the day. My job would be done. So it's absolutely about having age appropriate, and every child's different. I think my second son, Bear, still hasn't actually asked me what abortion is, and so he's roughly aware, but he doesn't want to leave, and so you just kind of have to, like, depending on the children. Where can folks go to get more information about Pelican Project, and like what can they download there or order, I guess?
So it's pelicanprojectministry.org, and you got to put in that whole thing. If you just Google Pelican Project, there's a few other ministries called Pelican.
Okay.
It's pelicanprojectministry.org, and 100% of our digital resources are free. So we have life focus guides where you can go in and you can, like, if you have a question, you want to talk to your little person about, protecting the unborn, you can download a life focus guide that's like the masculine genius, the feminine genius, if you have like a subject that you need to talk to your little one about. Or we have our Pray Grow Serves, which encourages families to pray, grow, and serve together. And that is we follow the liturgical cycle. And so there's 52 every year. Every single Sunday is a new one out. We have some studies. We have teen life focus guides. So how do you have these conversations with your teens? We have one of my favorite ones right now. I have two. It's one, my abortion appointment. So I share my own story with teens. And two is a girl named Carrie, where we talk about eugenics and just introduce eugenics to teens. And that really is an interesting way to get that abortion conversation going. So,
yeah. I love this. I'm on the website right now. It's amazing. Like,
thank you.
It was like a one pager on what is theology of the body. I could have used this years ago.
I know, because I was never taught. We kind of unpacked.
I'm a convert to Catholicism. So like the phrase theology of the body is only something Catholics know.
Yes.
And so I remember being a Protestant launching Students for Life. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, you could have a TOB session at the National Students for Life Conference. I'm like, what is that?
That's so funny.
This would have been so helpful. Where were you 16 years ago?
That's so funny. Like, well, my colleague Crystal is, she's a convert. And so we have this like cool dynamic where she's like, hey, I would have needed that. I don't know this. And so, yeah, we do Humanae Vitae, we do Familiaris Consortio. And we dig into the fact that God created, his design for the family is where we first encounter, receive, and then learn how to share his love. And when we can do that, and like, that's our mission field. Like, there are mission fields, the abortion clinic, there's lots of places where we could do pro-life work, but we have to start with pro-life work within the four walls of the domestic church.
This is awesome. I'm sending this to my team right now. We have a whole called initiative at Students for Life. And so we're working with, trying to get more Students for Life groups in Catholic high schools and Christian high schools across the country. Because one of the things we noticed since the fall of Roe has been our Catholic and non-Catholic Christian high schools have actually been doing less and less. That they didn't a lot of them didn't come to the March for Life this year. And so it's a big worry of mine, because in terms of creating that pro-life generation, the church has been responsible for creating that pro-life generation, of sowing those seeds that we can come along and harvest on the campus, of saying, hey, are you pro-life? Yep. Do you know what to do? Nope. Great. I can work with that. All we need you to say is, yes, you're pro-life. Yes, you're willing. We will teach you how to be pro-life. But I first need that generation to say, I'm against abortion. I know abortion's wrong. I may not know what to do about it, but I know it's wrong. Right. I need those people. And the church creates those young people in high school by taking them to the March for Life in Washington, D.C., by getting them active. And one of my biggest fears since now we've entered this post-Roe era is this job's done, feet on the desk. We don't have to take that painful, grueling, expensive trip to the March for Life every year. This is all done.
100%.
That March for Life transforms young people's lives. Yeah. And makes them, I polled our staff recently, more than 75% of our staff, which is largely Gen Z, some Gen Y, are serving full time in the pro-life movement today because they attended a March for Life or our national summit, which is the day after. I mean, that's massive. So, all right, I have to wrap this up. I could talk to you all day, Kelly. But thank you for coming on. It was such a great conversation to get to know more about the Pelican Project. And hopefully you'll be hearing from our team soon, because I just sent them an email that they have to start partnering with you with all these guides. I love it.
I'm all in. Thank you so much, Kristan.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. I hope you'll share and like this conversation with Kelly, and check out the Pelican Project Ministry, pelicanprojectministry.org. I've started downloading things right now, so I hope you will as well. See you next week, Pro Life Gen.